Fed Talk at the PILG. This is Fed Talk at the PILG, a friendly conversation on anything and everything federalism, with our host, Atty. Gwendolyn Pimentel-Gana. This podcast is brought to you by Pimentel Institute for Leadership and Governance and Hans Seidel Foundation, Philippines.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Fed Talk. Today, we have as guests a lady very close to my heart. She will be sharing with us her federalism journey and how getting to know about federalism impacted on her as a millennial. She is, of course, none other than Dominique Gana-Pabillore, a lawyer in the Gana Manlangit Law Office, a professional lecturer in Lyceum College of Law, Vice President and a member of the Board of Trustees of PILG. She was a participant to the 2024 winter program through the courtesy of the Hans Seidel Foundation. Welcome, Attorney Doms, or of course, I'll call you Doms. Hi, Doms.
Thank you for that introduction, Mom. And of course, hello to Mom and all the listeners and viewers of this podcast. So I'm Doms, and I am excited to be here today to talk about federalism and the winter program and all the topics involved.
Yes, thank you, Doms. Okay, so without further ado, let's start our discussion, no? And well, first of all, Doms, what got you interested in federalism?
So, I obviously got into federalism because of my grandfather. So, former Senator Nene Pimentel, who of course has already passed away, and he was a big proponent of federalism in the Philippines. He felt that it was a form of government that could really help our country and unite us as a country that is composed of many islands, many cultures, many religions, and he felt that it was something unitive that was good for our country. So, of course, I was exposed to it from my grandfather, and as a lawyer, being able to read up on it, learn from what all the topics on federalism were in the Philippines. And then I was lucky enough this year, 2024, to be able to attend the winter program in Austria, Innsbruck, Austria, and also Bolzano, Bozen, Italy, of course, with the support of the Hans Seidel Foundation.
Yeah, so Doms, will you tell us what is this winter program for starters that
Okay.
really got you interested in federalism?
So this winter program, it's a 2-week program and it's on federalism and sustainability. And we start off with the first week being in Innsbruck, Austria, and it's hosted by the University of Innsbruck. While in the second week, we then travel to Bolzano, Bozen, Italy, and it's hosted by the URAC Research Center. And through these 2 weeks, we're basically exposed to lectures, to workshops, to even like activities and even games and even other activities that will teach us and make us learn about federalism. And also in this program, it's a really good program because you get to meet different people and different, let's say, young leaders or leaders in general in the field of federalism from different parts of the world, from different countries, and of course, with different cultures. So it's a really interesting and good program. Yeah.
So Doms, you've been in that winter program for 2 weeks, you said, and you've been traveling, meeting a lot of people, and learning from the different professors. What were your best takeaway from this program? Your learnings?
I mean, of course, to be honest, there was a lot of learnings. It was a really intensive two-week course where we would have classes from 9 in the morning, even up to like 4 or 5 p.m. And I guess one way to look at it is the learning never stops. You learn in a formal setting from your professors, from your lecturers in the 9 to 5. And then at the end of the day, you're still learning from your classmates. We have conversations over dinner, over the weekends, even while you're sightseeing or doing a city tour. There's just always so much to learn. So I feel like it was really an intensive and immersive 2-week course to just learn. And from this experience, I would guess I just want to share 3 of my favorite learnings, or maybe 3 that, had an impression on me that I'd want to share.
Impacted on you. Yeah.
So the first would definitely be this line that I think Professor Palermo and also Professor Jared said, and it was ultimately that institutions matter and because they are meant to solve problems. And that really struck me because I think how you approach institutions. So we are, of course, a central government, democratic. We have the legislative, executive, judicial, like that's our form of government. And every country has a different form of government. There are other countries that are federal states, which is of course different from the Philippines, being a country that is not with a federal system. And it's easy to think that it doesn't matter what the institution is. Not every country does it a different way, and it doesn't actually matter. And each country will, I guess, figure it out on their own. But from that statement, it struck me that institutions are actually important and that they're meant to play a role into helping the specific and individual situations of a country. And I personally don't know if our current institution is maybe the best for us. Is it the perfect institution that is working to meet the needs of our country? And I think that's why it was interesting because it allows us to want to explore federalism, and maybe federalism could be a institution or a form of government that might be more beneficial for the Philippines. I'm not saying that as a fact it is, but it might be really something to explore because there are really a lot of benefits that federalism could bring. And if we were to study it and to see that it could work in the Philippines, and then therefore we could have an institution that could actually, solve the problems of our country. So that statement from the two professors really struck me. And I felt that's what we were learning in the 2 weeks, how institutions matter and how they're meant to solve problems.
Doms, you were talking about institutions being important in terms of governance. What's another learning that you've, stumbled into while going through this program?
So aside from the learning I shared with you, which of course I feel is more conceptual, it was also interesting to have learnings that were more, I guess, like technical or more practical. And one of the learnings I really was so interesting to me was this learning about this concept of a digital twin. So during the program, we had this um e- uh so during the program, we had this workshop where we were focused on learning about sustainable cities. And they were teaching us about how do you make a city sustainable. And in this class, we were introduced to the concept of a digital twin, which for me personally, as a lawyer in the Philippines, it's not something I've ever heard of before. And it's not really a concept that I would be exposed to. And based on my, of course, layman understanding of this digital twin, it's a digital plan that allows you to determine how infrastructures affect, let's say, a city, affect, of course, a community at large. And my understanding of that is that before they develop a city, they're going to do this digital plan where they'll determine if, let's say, we plant a tree in this area, how will that affect the community? How will that affect the people living here? So it's very purposeful it's a bottom to top approach in building a city to making sure that it's sustainable, but also that it's sustainable for the community members. So that was something I've never heard before. And it was such an interesting way. And I mean, definitely something I would feel is so useful in the Philippines to be able to create local governments and cities that really meet the specific needs of our constituents. So that was something very interesting to learn and something that they're doing in other countries that I'm not certain if they're doing it here, but it's something new and interesting to me.
That seems to involve a lot of planning, therefore. It should be bottoms to top planning, whereby the constituents are actually being involved in planning for what is good for their city or their municipality or province. So that's a very good thing. But you were talking of digital
Twin. It's like a digital plan that they create. So before they actually do it, they can already see how certain infrastructures will affect the city and is
okay.
sustainable. So,
Yeah.
so the best way to explain it really is what they said was that they'll create a plan, let's say, of an area. They'll put a tree in a certain area and they'll say, does this make sense? Will it block a road?
Yeah.
Will it block a road? Will by putting this tree here, will it be difficult to a certain village? So how does it affect? So it's very intentional in creating a city at the beginning to ensuring that it's sustainable. So I've just never heard of it. So it is very interesting to me.
Okay, so what's this third learning you were talking about, Doms?
Okay, so of course there are many learnings, so but I'm just breaking it down to three so that doesn't take too long. And I guess the third and most interesting learning for me was really I love learning from my classmates. So I had classmates from, of course, all over the country, people from Asia, from Europe, from the Americas, and it was so nice to learn from them and how federalism works in their countries. So I was able to learn the specifics of, let's say, how do they have their own, how do they do fiscal decentralization, how does the federal system work for them. So they were actually able to give very concrete, very specific ways on how it works in their country. So it was really great to be able to learn really from the source, like a local expert in that country, having a local expert in India, a local expert from Brazil, a local expert from Germany. So it was really nice being able to ask my classmates and learn from them.
Having through 2 weeks of winter program and being exposed to your classmates, your professors, and visiting two different countries, how do you think this would learnings that you have be able to be implemented in the Philippines if it can be implemented? And how would the youth be able to understand these things if they don't also have the opportunity like you had? As a millennial, how did this impact on you? Can it work in the Philippines?
Okay, so I'll break that apart because there are a lot of thoughts in that question. But for the first, definitely, I think it is important for the youth or, of course, the Filipinos to learn about federalism because it really might become an institution or a form of government that can help us. Because even if we don't become a federal government one day, one of the core principles of federalism is decentralization, which is something that we practice and it's enshrined in the Constitution of the Philippines. And we can get learnings from foreign countries who practice decentralization in, of course, federalism state. So that's definitely something that we can bring into the Philippines. We can learn and we can always improve on and become better. So I do believe that it's important for the youth to learn about federalism. How does it work? What are the values or best practices that they can take away and bring into the Philippines for, of course, our own specific setup, our own specific, how will it be able to address our specific needs and concerns? And for your second question is, what are the advantages of federalism in the Philippines? Is on top of mind, definitely. Federalism at its core, its concept is to be able to keep a country that is diverse with different religions, different cultures, and even in our setup would be in different islands, and still being able to keep it united. So it's unity amidst diversity. And it's definitely something that we need in the Philippines and would make sense in the context of our country. So I do believe that that principal core of what federalism is something that can work in the Philippines and can help us. And also my professors have explained that federalism, aside from being something that unifies a country, can also be something that is a peacekeeping tool to be able to keep peace and harmony with the country, which is something I feel that is so important in the Philippines in keeping peace between Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao and making us a whole united Philippines. So there are a lot of advantages that federalism has to offer that I believe could be beneficial to us, but it is something that has to be studied more. We have to see how does federalism truly work? And then the next step, of course, is how does it work in the Philippine setup, which is the most important. Because as my professors, I recall, kept on emphasizing, there is no federalism one size fits all. It works different for every country, and each country has to figure it out and how it works for them.
Okay. How about would it be able to help poorer local government units in terms of uplifting their economic status of the people there?
I would think definitely that's something that it addresses. I recall one of my classmates mentioned that in India, they have a very specific fiscal equalization program.
Equality.
Yes, we're in, of course, there are, let's for in our sense, we call them LGUs, right? They're bigger, let's say, cities or local government units that are able to generate more income, more money, and it will be redistributed through some kind of formula to help, let's say, the poorer LGUs or the poorer local government units. So there is really a way, of course, to be able to uplift the country as a whole and not just focus on the richer local government units. So that is something that federalism usually aims to address.
Doms, you were talking about the advantages, about what's good in federalism. Now, considering that the Philippines is not a federal state, what do you think are the immediate challenges now that we are facing?
So of course, I think the immediate challenge would be the fact that to be able to push for federalism and for it to happen in our country, that would involve a constitutional amendment. And of course, that would involve legislation. So therefore, a lot would have to happen before we can actually effect federalism in our country. And to do that, of course, would mean that national government would have to cede more power, would have to cede more uh, financial resources to the LGU levels, to the local governments. And aside from that, it's also the fact that we would lack the capacity building and the expertise to be able to push federalism, to be able to train these local government officials to be able to know how to affect whatever changes will occur in converting into a federal state or federal country. And last but not the least, it will also be us figuring out our own fiscal redistribution formula and how that would work. Because as we know, there are a lot of poor LGUs in the Philippines, and we would have to be able to support them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and to be able to support their own constituents. So there are, of course, a lot of issues that would have to be resolved and a lot of hurdles that we would have to be able to find solutions for. But in the end of the day, if we believe that long-term federalism could become a institution or federalism could become the form of government that can help us address all the different problems in the Philippines and would be better for the Filipino people, then it's really something to study and to explore and to see if it's possible.
Yes. So, anyway, Doms, any last words of parting to our listeners and viewers in our podcast?
Of course, in the end of the day, my last words would really just be that I feel that federalism is really something that should be studied and should be something that we explore as a Filipino and for the Philippines. And if it's something that can work for us and be better for us in our country. So my hope is that we continue to have federalism education. It's something that continues to spread so that the public and even the youth are more aware about federalism as a concept. How is it as a concept? How is it as an institution? How does it actually work? And how would it work in the Philippines? And that's just my hope that it's something that we can continue to push. And maybe who knows in the future, it's something that can be better for our country.
Thank you very much, Attorney Dominique Pimentel-Gana, Pabillore. That's a long name, Doms.
Thanks, Mom.
Anyway, thank you. It was nice talking to you about your experience and, of course, from the eyes of a millennial. That's why we are doing this podcast, because we indeed would want to communicate to our youth, especially, and of course, to everyone, what is federalism all about? Make it simple to understand. But there is a need to be more educated on the subject. And I think it is important to involve the youth also. So that is why we are doing this Fed Talk on federalism here in the Pimentel Institute for Leadership and Governance. Thank you, everyone. Good day and sa muling pagbabalik. See you all.
Good governance does not depend on the governors alone, but also on the governed.